On this week's full-time roundup, we get you ready for Championship Sunday. Plus, there were a couple games during the midweek that we want to cover. Full-time roundup starts right now. And welcome into the latest edition of the full-time roundup. Our normal roundup, no collaboration on this one. Matt Gesslin here with Daniel Brackett. Daniel, was great to listen to you and Johnny Hayes chatting the other day. As you guys mentioned, we'll be doing some more of that collaboration content with them going forward. So it was great to hear you guys talk about it, but it's good to be back. We have a lot to talk about. Of course, Sunday being Championship Sunday in most of the leagues. Some of the leagues don't have much to play for, but the Premier League definitely does. And we had a little preview of what could have been an even more intriguing Championship Sunday in the midweek with some brilliant games that we want to get to. But first of all, how are you doing? I know last night I had celebratory revels. You did not have celebratory revels. Of course, the Rangers had an unbelievable epic comeback. I may or may not have a voice still. I just can't quite tell. I'm probably a little bit in euphoria at the moment. But how are you doing outside of maybe not your Hurricanes doing too well?
I'm doing pretty well. Got a nice weekend planned here. So hoping for good weather. Charlotte FC is going to be in town with the Galaxy, so that should be fun. In terms of the Canes losing, we were down 3-0 in the series, and we won 2 in a row to make things super interesting.
Oh, here comes the justification. Here comes the justification. We were down 3-0.
No. I'm just saying we were up 3-1, looking like we were going to force a game 7. You were completely gave up on your team, said the series is over. Rangers are cooked. It's my team. I know what I'm talking about. Even though I actually, for once, was like, no, you're probably wrong on this one. They're going to come back, and it'll be an interesting series, at least for Game 7. They do, of course, and you're in euphoria an hour later after we had that conversation. So congratulations on your Rangers. Happy for you. Actually, I'm not happy for you. I take that back. But, it was all
That's
good
not very
fun.
nice.
The last week was fun because I could tell you were extremely rattled with your team, and was really hoping to force Game 7 to make things even more interesting. But there is so much football to talk about, Matt. We'll go ahead and move on because, unfortunately, your other team here is doing pretty well, unfortunately, with Chelsea. And they win narrowly at Brighton here. And this top 6 talk seems like it
Hold
is...
Hold on. Don't let me tell you I told you so. Don't let
my
me
worst
tell you
nightmare.
I told you so.
it's I texted you in our chat with Johnny and all them saying, if Newcastle lose, Manchester United win, Chelsea's in the top 6. I have, bucked against this thought all season long, and this will mean Matt's right. And I don't know if I can do this. So you guys are in 6. So congratulations, Europa Conference League. 3 points. So you're 3 points in front of Newcastle and Manchester United here. So it's still tough game on the final day, which we'll get to. But right now you are in pole position to get 6. So congratulations on your very bold prediction. I don't even know how many months ago.
Appreciate that. Yeah, a point guarantees us 6. So yeah, a tough game, although it's at home against Bournemouth. So we'll be at the bridge, and just a point secures 6th. It feels like just yesterday we were down in 13th and 14th, and the sky was falling out. And of course, I was not very confident in just the direction of the squad. But there was a lot of games.
Another team you gave up on.
There's a trend here, Daniel. When I don't have any skin in the game or I give up, my teams turn around. When I'm all in and invested, it's like the inevitable. Had I watched that game, just to bring it back 1 second, had I watched like that 10-minute period where you guys had a chance to go up 4-1, I think we probably would have scored. and the game would have been over last night. So that's just how it works with me. If I say something the opposite, which we've talked about, people know that on the show. If you've listened, Daniel's called me out on it a few times. But yeah, it's good to be in sixth. Of course, the team's playing much better. We alluded to it a couple shows ago, and Johnny talked about it with you the other day. Just Chelsea having a little bit of run of form here at the end of the season, and that's 4 wins in a row in the Premier League. They've lost 1 game in their last 14, which was of course to Arsenal. Granted, there were some draws in there against teams like Sheffield and Burnley, but still, since February, they've only lost 1 game. So, good form. Mauricio Pochettino has found a way to get this team going. You kind of thought he would. You hoped he would. Of course, everyone, kind of, I wouldn't say that discrediting him as a manager, but there was, a lot of, wow, is he going to be really the guy to do it? And what he needs time. And these are young players, and the youngest average squad in the Premier League. And we've talked about it before where, there a lot of times when you have a team like this, you still have some veteran presence to kind of offset some of that. And other than Thiago Silva, who's of course, not coming back after the season, there really isn't anyone that's had that much experience. Maybe Reece James, who's been hurt all season. So it's been a good opportunity for the kids to get really some good experience. I think in the off season, they'll take that next step. And I'm not saying we're fighting for the title next year by any stretch of the imagination, but I could see, top 4 being that progression, that next step. Of course, if Manchester City beat Manchester United in the FA Cup, which I think we all expect, that moves that 6th place into Europa League versus Conference League, which is a big difference just in the level of competition and what you're playing for. So you guys talked about the other day, regardless if it's Conference League or actually Europa League, give me Europe. The more experience you get, the more progression that you're going to see from these players, the more that they're going to level up, given the competition, given the understanding of what it takes to go through a midweek to get their body prepared and ready to go for the weekend. And it's just all part of being a pro. And I think that this squad is learning that. Of course, individuals like Cole Palmer, who absolutely stand out and just shine week in, week out, are just going to continue to progress and honestly could be a Euro squad player given how he's played. So a lot to look up to, a lot of positives for Chelsea. But we're not here necessarily, Daniel, to talk about Chelsea today. There was a lot of implications in the midweek about the title race. I know we want to get to United and Newcastle here in a minute, but for me, the biggest game of the week, of course, was City versus Spurs on the road. Not having scored a goal in White Hart or Tottenham Stadium, if you will, whichever you want to call it, still the same grounds. And yet this game could have gone either way. And if you were a City fan, I think you were a little bit more nervous than you expected to be.
No, absolutely. Just quickly to put a bow on Chelsea against Brighton here. Cole Palmer, 32 goals and assists in the Premier League and 33 apps. So in a goal and assist a game, basically just insanity. And then I wanted to shout out someone who I was very critical of beforehand, another 22-year-old, Moises Caicedo.
Great game.
He has, since probably, I want to say, late April, so the last 6 or 5 games, has played remarkably well. One of the best players on the pitch. Seems like he had to step up his game when Enzo got hurt. So I wanted to shout him, and then your outside backs, Cucurella and Gusto, which we've talked about the formation change a little bit. But I just wanted to at least touch on that because I did watch this game a little bit and noticed that. But yes, Spurs, City, I was all in on Tottenham Hotspur today or the other day, and I was trying to figure out what would be the most Spurs thing to do.
We saw it.
Do you think we saw it? Because I was like, all right, is the most Spurs thing to beat Manchester City and then give their arch rival the trophy? Or is it to, when everyone's rooting for Spurs, for them to lose in remarkable fashion to Manchester City, or to get a draw just to like mess up Europe, So like there were so many different possibilities with this game especially since they're in the mix for Champions League, or were in the mix, not anymore. Congratulations to Aston Villa for that. But yeah, no, I just had a lot of different issues with this match. Um, Starting with the no number 9 that Spurs kind of employed. Obviously, the first goal when you play Manchester City is to overload the midfield and make it very difficult to break down, which they did with one of the most defensive midfields I've seen, with Bentancur, Højbjerg, Sarr, and then Madison, I guess, was like the roamer. But they actually looked pretty good on the counterattack, but they had a giant hole in the middle of the pitch while attacking, because Madison and Son would drift out wide. So I feel like if they just employed their normal 4-3-3, obviously they'd be more susceptible in the back line, but you'd actually have a target man in the middle of the field to kind of play off of when you go and attack. And I mean, Richarlison's injured. They're pretty injured just in general. Werner's out as well. So I feel like they just didn't really have anyone to lean on. But I would have played Son up top, maybe Kulusevski on the wing. He didn't start, and kind of see what we can do from there. But yes, they do lose 2-0. Haaland scores both goals, and it's looking like City are going to win another Premier League this weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think, to your point, and we'll get to his comments after the match.
Which was even more interesting than the game.
I totally agree. And I think what I'm going to kind of tee up is in an interesting way is to your point, that's not the way that he wants to play the game. And so he being Ange Postecoglou, of course, manager of Spurs, he's been very critical of the last couple of weeks of the squad and just what he's been seeing behind closed doors, et cetera. Like I said, we'll get to that rant a little bit here in a second. But then to go out and not play a number 9, like you said, and to kind of change your formation at the mercy of not wanting to get trounced by City. Obviously, you have to adapt. You can't be, playing forward the entire time. We've talked about that, how we think that Spurs ran out of gas a little bit as well, just because they're not ready to play his style of ball. I think there's going to be a hybrid of his style next year going forward. No pun intended, but going forward will be different next year than it was this year. But at the same time, like you said, play your game. This and why are you uncertain about who you are and what your style is? And it shouldn't matter if you're playing against City or Real Madrid or Sheffield. Like, if you believe in your formation and your style of play, go and do it. Now, you don't have to be as aggressive with it, but if your formation is your formation, then why were you changing it for this game? And it was interesting. You saw still, even in that, there were opportunities for Spurs. Son missing that breakaway was, pretty remarkable given just our expectation of him. And so you understand that he's a little bit out of form as well. That right foot of Stefan Ortega probably saves, City the title race, honestly, or at least, gives them that opportunity going into Sunday to really close it out on their own expectation versus having to rely on Arsenal. I don't think the crowd played into it, honestly, and I don't think maybe the players had their heads in the beach mode, like we saw with West Ham the other day versus Chelsea. I don't think maybe it was, and we just didn't see it. But it felt weird to me that he is such a believer and proponent of his style and is very vocal about that with the media and against his players, and yet he made some pretty glaring changes to the lineup, the way that they played, to kind of tailor that to not lose, if you will, against City. So it goes both ways. I was a little confused. And then, of course, the post-game conference comments were just, whoa, what is actually about to happen here at Spurs? Is he saying he wants out? Is he saying he needs to make some wholesale changes with the staff and the players? Is Daniel Levy not going to give him what he's asking for? Has he been asking Daniel Levy for some more funds to get some new players, and Daniel Levy's just comfortable with a 5th place team? There's a lot to unpack on that, but I think a lot of it stems from what they did on the pitch as well, especially the last couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, you touched on a lot there. Ortega definitely was my man of the match.
Absolutely.
And
Unbelievable.
he only played 20 minutes roughly, maybe a little bit more with stoppage time, but made some he made one save. It wasn't Son, it was on the right side, so I believe that was Kulusevski when he came in. Made a
Oh,
really
yeah.
nice kick save.
Unbelievable save. Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
one-on-one save with Son. He's going to be the keeper for the final stretch of the FA Cup
It
in the
looks like
Premier
that.
League.
It does look like that. Yeah.
News came out. I think Romero fractured Ederson's like cheekbone or like near his eye socket a little bit, so Ederson's out for the season. But you did make some. He has been. Ange is the gift that keeps on giving, and he has been very, like you said, he's been very vocal about how he likes to play. But at the end of the day, the guy likes to win. And so he thought this was the best setup to win this game. I was critical of how he set up, but I did like Van de Ven at left back, Dragusin in the middle of the park, and then Romero as well. So I liked his defensive back line tweak that he did, just not the going forward. But I think his mentality is Ange Postecoglou does not like to lose at all. And it's been pretty
You can see it.
obvious.
You can see it. He does not like to lose.
It's been pretty obvious this year. They started out really hot, and then when they have those bad games, he is not a pleasant person in the press conference. And I think that he was just really disappointed with how Spurs fans were talking about this game. Apparently, one of the staff before the game joked that he should play a youth lineup. So Spurs just get battered and Arsenal don't win. And I think apparently he was furious. Now that could be completely that could be wrong, but I just was looking on X for certain insider info there just to see what he was talking about there, because those match comments definitely were interesting. But Spurs aren't one of those clubs yet that no matter what they want to challenge, they want to win every single game, no matter what the consequences are. And that's just more of a indictment on them as a club than Ange Postecoglou, in my opinion. And if one man's to change that, it is Ange, hopefully. But I like his mentality. And if I was a Spurs fan, I would really co-sign with him wanting to win every single game, no matter if Arsenal or a rival win. That shouldn't matter. You should just want to win every football game you can, especially with UCL on the line like that. It shouldn't be a question that you want to beat City. And I just was disappointed in, my circles with how Spurs fans were talking, not, just like outside friends, we're not talking about Johnny here, but just other friends. I just didn't really know kind of where people's heads were at on Twitter and things like that. But it's a shame. It's really a shame.
It is. And here's the deal, right? And I think it's rich, if you will, for a Chelsea fan to say what I'm about to say to Spurs fans. Shut up. Because honestly, this guy is here and he wants to make you guys a successful club. No offense to you as Spurs fans. What have you done of late? I mean, you guys have not been a successful winning club that, has historically year over year wins trophies and does, is a top tier team. Yes, you guys are very good. You had a run with Mauricio Pochettino where you were close to winning the title. You made it to the Champions League final. We don't want to talk about that. That's a little trigger for John. So hopefully he's not listening. But other than that, you guys have, yep. Yeah, I know. I knew that was coming. Other than that, you have, this guy wants to get you guys to that next level. And for people to say, I'm not saying that they're calling for him to leave or whatever, but they kind of, like you said, they had that run at the beginning where they won 26 out of 30 points to start the season. They thought they were world beaters. They thought they were, the number one team in the world, and they were going to win everything going away. Well, guess what? That's not where you guys are as a club quite yet. So if this guy wants to come in and change the expectations that says, hey, we're going to win and we're winners now, good for him. And for you guys to sit there and say, well, let's not make sure Arsenal wins the title. Great. I understand it. I understand the rivalry, and I do get it, but you nailed it right on the head. It shouldn't matter if Arsenal wins, if City wins. You should just take care of your business. There was a lot to still be played for there. And I think that's part of what he's upset about, is just, that story
Mentality.
might not have, the mentality, and that story that you mentioned might not have been the staff, might have been a player, might have been somebody that, in passing or in the training ground, they were talking about it under their breath. They didn't realize he was walking around the corner or something, and he heard it. That's something that he, as the manager at the top, needs to get and squash. And so I think you're going to see a lot of, if he stays, which I think he does, I think he's willing to get the project going the right direction. And I think you're going to see a lot of turnover at Spurs, players, personnel, just especially given the last couple of weeks. And we've talked about it too. I think he needs an offseason to get players he wants in there that can play the style and have that mentality that he's looking for. So all in all, if you're Spurs, if you're a Spurs fan and you sat here at the beginning of the season and said, we're going to finish 5th, I think most Spurs fans would genuinely take that and say, that would be a good season. Now, given the context of where you were, maybe it's a little bit more bitter pill to swallow. Easy for me to say this morning, but I still think most Spurs fans would take 5th if you just kind of dropped them at the beginning of the season.
Absolutely. And getting to the last game of the Premier League slate midweek, there were some big implications with this game, especially with Chelsea, but mostly Newcastle and Manchester United. Manchester United, finally win a big game at Old Trafford, it feels like. It was a 3-2 thriller, and now they're level on points at 57 points. Just the only thing separating them is goal differential, which, if we're being honest,
not in United's favor. Not in United's favor.
United being 8th with a -3 goal differential is quite remarkable. Versus Newcastle with plus 21. So, a 24 goal difference.
Yeah, they're not making that up in one game, that's for sure.
They're not. So they need to win, and Newcastle need to lose for sure or get a draw. But the game itself, we saw a little bit of like Ange's tactics here with McTominay and Bruno playing the 10 and the 9 here. They kind of switched out. But this game was really defined by the youngsters, in my opinion. You saw Amad Diallo, who's kind of come on the scene as of late, scored some big goals. You saw that in the FA Cup against Liverpool. You saw that last week. He gets a goal and assist this game. Kobe Mainu scores as well, and then Victor Hoyland off the bench scores, and then Lewis Hall for Newcastle makes things really interesting at the end of the game to give Newcastle a lifeline to try to tie it up. This game was a lot of fun to watch. I had a great time watching it because I knew you were watching the Chelsea game. But United are kind of churning out some results here with one of the worst back lines I've seen in recent memory. And maybe Ten Hag's not going to go out, he's going to go out fighting at least. And he might be gone at the end of the season. He probably will be gone. But at least he's doing his best to try to set up Manchester United for good results here after, two tough losses in a row.
Yeah, there was a lot to unpack here. I did watch this one on my iPad. Thankfully, my internet was able to deal with both at the same time, which is pretty remarkable right now. So yeah, the couple things. There's a lot to unpack in this game. You mentioned the youngsters, which I think we know Manchester United has some players in the academy and coming up through the ranks. A couple other players that didn't even play. On the back, and a 17-year-old and a center back who could, and I can't pronounce his name.
Kembwala.
Thank you. There it is. There's a good set of 10 to 12 players that are going to be the future for Manchester United. I do think maybe there's an opportunity where Erik ten Hag gets a chance, one more season to go and see what he can do. And maybe there isn't anyone available right now. We've seen a lot of guys come off the market. Whether they've re-signed or maybe Thomas Tuchel is available, just given everything at Bayern Munich. Although it sounds like maybe he's rethinking his decision to stay there too. So the situation with Erik ten Hag is pretty fluid. Look, they're playing for a trophy as well in a couple of weeks, and if they can knock off their rivals and win that, highly unlikely, that could change the dynamic too. So 8th is of course the worst Premier League season in Manchester United, and I believe it's like 20 plus years, something like that. So the results have not been great, but to your point, and everyone recognizes it's been pretty poor all season long. I mean, the scenes against Arsenal post game with the flooding coming through the stadium just epitomize the entire season in a nutshell for Manchester United. Just, everything that's going on with the Glazers over the past couple of years, the stadium falling apart, the team falling apart. That just was tip of the iceberg, exactly what you want to see, to kind of just say, okay, that is the low point. And now I think you have an opportunity where you're, like you said, some of these youngsters coming, and the future does look bright. Now, is it Eric Ten Hag? Who knows? But I don't foresee this Manchester United squad being down as bad as they have been for too much longer. Now that could be completely flipped on its head, depending on who they bring in. It could be another set of downward spiral, but I doubt it. As far as the rest of the game is concerned, there was some instances here. Actually, there's one instance as well, which we didn't touch on in the Chelsea game with VAR, the Cucurella penalty that kind of was not a penalty. And same here where Anthony Gordon gets absolutely taken aback in the first half. You had a similar incident actually in our game on Tuesday where you just got basically cleated on the Achilles. And same with Anthony Gordon here, and VAR didn't even see it. Probably changes the game if he scores that early goal there before United get theirs. So, there was a lot to unpack here. I was surprised by Eddie Howe's team losing this one, given what was at stake, and you could see the frustration on the players' faces after the game. They knew that this was a game that they needed to win, not only to keep up with Chelsea, but probably more so for just mentality against the fact that they just lost to a United team that's been very, very poor and hasn't won a game in 9 in the Premier League. So I don't know really which way to go here. Both, it's positive for United, negative to the end of the season for Newcastle, an up and down season for Newcastle all around. But there was some instances in Lewis Hall, like you said, a wonder strike, former Chelsea player, not surprised that he scores after he leaves, but just a good game, a fun game for the neutral for sure, as I was a neutral on this one, but especially given Chelsea were winning.
Well, you were technically a United fan apparently through group
once
chat,
we were winning, it didn't matter. So, we were fine. So,
but beforehand, but
yes, going into it, I was a United fan.
There was one of the funnier texts I've actually seen in recent memory from a United fan before this game, and I wanted to share on the pod. He texts me in a group chat we're in, and he goes, at this rate, like you mentioned, just a terrible run of 9 in the Premier League. He said, honestly, all I see in this lineup is, and he writes idiot in the formation 8 times, and then the only names he filled in were Mainu, Bruno, and Garnacho. And the rest of the team names and his XI who's starting was just idiot. And I thought that was pretty funny. That epitomizes how United fans feel for this season. If you ask a lot of them, they're probably Ten Hag out unless they're going to bring in Southgate. So I don't think they want that either. But it's going to be really interesting. And let's go ahead and do a quick preview on Championship Sunday since we're already on the Premier League. What games are really standing out for you?
Well, of course, we'll have the 2 title games, the siding games, City, versus West Ham. Keep an eye on West Ham. They may give a surprise.
David Moyes' last game. Why not?
Going out with a bang.
The bubble.
It is I know it's at the Etihad though. Had it been at home, I could have seen West Ham get up for David Moyes a little bit more. City probably going to score first 20 minutes of this game and probably put it on ice. But I will say it was a little bit concerning watching them play against Spurs. They got a little tighter. You could feel it. If West Ham can make it out to the second half 0-0 or tied, this could get really interesting. But I do think City will take it early and then kind of cruise. If that's the case, then all the rest of the games don't really matter. I would love to see Arsenal versus Everton, of course, the other game in the title race. I would love this to go down to the 90th minute or 85th minute and having to flip back and forth. I just don't see it. Of course, all games will be played at 11 o'clock. So get your calendars, get your schedule ready for that. Find a bar with 800 televisions, because not only does the Premier League do Championship Sunday, Bundesliga as well. So you'll have plenty of games to watch on Sunday if you're,
and La Liga
if you're a
too.
fan. And La Liga. So every league will be at the same time, all games. So that way there are no funny business with results, if you will. But those are the two games to me. Obviously, everything else is pretty much locked and set, at this point in the season. So as much as I love that the fact that all the games are on at the same time, there's really only two games to watch. I mean, Chelsea, Bournemouth, of course, will be on for me just to have, and if we can get that point, then we lock up that last Europe spot that's available. But everything else is pretty much done and dusted.
Yeah, the Chelsea Bournemouth game looks fun. Jurgen Klopp's, I got to mention it. Jurgen Klopp's
That
last
final
game,
game. Yeah, last game
at
yeah.
Anfield against Wolves. They've been doing a lot of stuff in the background this week regarding that. Took a picture.
Will you cry? Are you going to cry?
It's kind of hit me. I haven't really thought about it that much the last couple weeks, just because it's been a pretty rough couple weeks, to be honest. And I've been really more thinking about, the future of the squad and who stays, who goes, stuff like that. We've assembled the Avengers front office staff, it seems, with Julian Ward coming back and Michael Edwards, and they've been signing guys left and right in the front office. So definitely excited for the future. But at the end of the day, Liverpool would not be the football club it is without Jurgen Klopp. I think he's, shooting as at least a top 2 manager in the history, if not number 1 in just the modern era, at least. So this game, I feel like once I flip it on and I see Anfield do the "Never Walk Alone" chant and, give Jurgen a swan song after the game, I think that the sadness will definitely hit me, and it's going to be a tough one to swallow for sure. So I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for that yet, but I've been kind of blocking it out of my mind for as long, probably a couple months now. So I'm sure it will hit me, and hopefully we get together to watch all these matches. Crystal Palace versus Aston Villa means absolutely nothing, but it should be pretty fun. I think that match looks fun. But other than that, it's going to be a great championship Sunday. Can't believe the Premier League is already ending. We started the podcast on the second week of the Premier League, so we've basically covered, as full-time roundup, the entire Premier League season basically. So it's been a really cool season for us to cover and talk football. So it's weird that it's kind of at its end so abruptly, it feels like. But
we'll have one more to go. We'll have one more episode for sure. So don't get too emotional yet.
I know. I just wanted to tee that up, and then we'll go to the Bundesliga. Just a couple storylines as they play on Saturday. They all play at 9:30, their usual kickoff time. Bayer plays Augsburg. Are you feeling pretty good about keeping their unbeaten streak alive?
Boy, you'd have to think if they would at this point, right? One more to go. You would have thought maybe the game that they would have dropped would have been after they clinched the title, and they have not stopped. And of course, they still have Europa League, and then they'll have the Pokai Cup at the end of the season. So you're all focused right now is on this game against Augsburg, and no discredit to Augsburg, but Bayer Leverkusen are definitely the better side here. And if they put any attention to this game, they do get it done. And it's a remarkable season. And I know, Harrison wasn't necessarily too keen on my take of greatest team of all time, but if they get this done and they win Europa League and they win the Pokai Cup, we're having a conversation about it, because that would be an amazing, amazing feat to be undefeated across the entire campaign and all competitions. That just does not happen regardless of league, team, year. It's just a remarkable story. So yes, the short answer is they get it done on Saturday against Augsburg.
Yeah, Augsburg also have lost 4 straight, so they're coming up needing a win here. But they're honestly comfortably mid-table, so they might be on holiday at this point and just want to give Bayer Leverkusen the storyline they deserve within the Bundesliga of being unbeaten. So I could see them kind of rolling over here and it being a fairly easy, or they could decide to play the villain and spoilers. It's really up to Augsburg and their mentality in this match. The other thing is Stuttgart do play Gladbach and Bayern Munich play at Hoffenheim. So if Stuttgart win this game, then they actually finish up in second here. But if Bayern Munich get a draw or better than Bayern Munich get the second spot. So I wanted to at least mention that, as we've talked about Stuttgart and Bayern Munich at length here on the pod throughout the year. So I at least wanted to preface that. And then the last thing I want to
Still a
preface.
great season, by the way, for Stuttgart,
Oh
given where they
yeah,
were, where they
third.
were.
I mean,
So
third place is still remarkable. Champions League football. Congratulations for
yeah,
Stuttgart. But there is a chance for them to get second, and that would be super cool, especially over Bayern, who actually have started to kind of change their take here on Thomas Tuchel, and he might be here to say based off
I
just
don't think they
knowing
have any choice, to be
they
honest.
don't.
They have nobody else. So
They don't, which is really funny because if you ask any Bayern fan, they probably do not want Thomas Tuchel to stay, kind of like a Manchester United situation here. But I think he's done enough in the last couple months to at least earn another season. But we'll have to see. And then just the relegation race with the Bundesliga. Union Berlin are in the relegation qualification at 30 points. Cone is in 17th in the relegation zone in 27. So they would have to beat Union Berlin. They'd have to win. Union Berlin would have to lose, and then they would have to score 3 more goals. Mine sits right above that qualification with 32 points, and then Bochum at 33. So that relegation bottom of the table is not been solved yet. So we'll have to see kind of what teams show up, and all those teams have everything to play for. I believe Bochum play Werder Bremen,
Werder
Mainz
Bremen,
play
yep,
Wolfsburg,
Wolfsburg,
and
yep.
Union Berlin play Freiburg. So tough games all around. Heidenheim plays Cologne. So it's looking like I would say it stays the same, but with these last games back against the wall, we could see some chaos here. So it's I just wanted to tee that up just a little bit. But the last thing I wanted to get to here was just the Coppa Italia happened on Wednesday, and Atalanta played Juventus, and you have to usually, prep yourself for watching a Juventus game, and because they don't play exactly pretty football. And I was thinking Atalanta, are super hot. Juve have been dreadful the last couple months, so Atalanta should win this game. But no, Allegri and his just cup heroics actually end up winning this game and hoisting one more trophy before Allegri leaves at the end of the season. I was pretty shocked by this result, but it was so fun. I mean, this game, Allegri just lost his head late, took his shirt off, took his tie off, threw everything. It looked like he was just going to start undressing in the middle of the final at the Olimpico. But I mean, we saw terrible refereeing. We saw dramatic shots off the post, off the crossbar. This game was wide open. Atalanta just struggled against a block of 10 Juventus men. And at the end of the day, it was a terrible season for Juventus, but they still got some some silverware, if you will. So congratulations on Juventus for at least showing up for the final.
Yeah, I mean, they have the roster, right? And so it's almost a kind of a matter of whenever they want to put their attention to something, they have a chance. But I was surprised. Atalanta have been very, very good. And they've been kind of the surprise in Europa and across Europe a lot of late. We've been pretty high on them all season, to be honest. Currently in 5th place in the title in the Serie A table. So yeah, I was surprised, but again, when Juventus want to play, they have the horses, if you will, and contrary to what we think about Allegri, the guy still knows how to get it done in big games. And congrats to Weston McKinnon for getting another trophy for U.S. men's national team.
And Weah.
And Weah, yeah, and Weah too. So exciting time for them as they go into Copa America in the summer. And unfortunately, they won't have much else to play for in Serie A at this point, going into the final weekend. But good way to close out for a rough Juventus season.
No, absolutely. And just another funny thing, he's actually now dating another Italian player on Inter Milan, his sister, which came out yesterday with the pictures, and Twitter was having an absolute field day with that. So I thought that was pretty funny. Some good banter
Always,
between Juventus and Inter.
always know you can come to the full-time roundup for the gossip. Daniel, I have
I
that
thought it was
covered for you.
interesting.
So.
I thought it was a funny little wrinkle here. But since we're touching on Italy, and we mentioned Serie A here, I just wanted to tee up. There are 2 more weekends left, this weekend and next weekend, but the relegation race, another relegation race, is still alive and well. Sassuolo with 29 points on 19, Empoli on 32 points, Frosinone on 32 points, Calgary on 33, and Udinese on 33 as well. So some crazy results could make the bottom, say bottom 14 down, could make this relegation race super interesting. So if you're a Serie A fan and you love a good relegation race, that's more of the sicko talk. But if you want to watch and keep your eye on that, since the title has been long gone, and European football looks pretty solid now for most of these top 8 teams, focus on the relegation race, because some nutty things could happen between that last 6 to 7 teams. So I just at least wanted to mention that. But we'll go ahead and, to be cognizant on time, we will touch on the EFL Cup here. Norwich.
I want to touch real quick on La Liga before we do that, because there is not much going on, but I think it's important to recognize that Barcelona jumped Girona, and it doesn't seem like much, but in the grand scheme of things for Barcelona, this is a huge deal. They get the way that Super Cup gets placed is the top 2 teams from Coppa del Rey, and then the winner of the top 2 in the league. And so they would have been out of that competition. Financially, there's huge implications there. And then second place, just again, financial implications for Barcelona. So it didn't seem like much, and there's still one more game to go that they could flip-flop in that position. But you would have thought Barcelona would have kind of been on the beach, ready to go, not much to play for. But there was a lot to play for Barcelona management. Maybe not so much the players. And so it was impressive that Barcelona was able to get things right and turn that around and get into a place where they're going to probably finish second and continue to have that top 2 really be the 2 teams in Spain. It would have been nice to see Girona, but and then additionally, quickly on Girona, it was announced that Manchester City or City Football Group does need to divest from their board position as well as their stake in Girona for Girona to play in the Champions League, given that they both will be part of that competition. So it'll be interesting to see the position and the stance that City Football Group takes. But you would hope that they would find a way to make that work, because it's an impressive story. I'm sure there's a backwards way of doing things here that City Football Group could still be involved going forward. But 2 interesting storylines in the otherwise pretty straightforward La Liga final weekend.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention one player here. He scored both the goals for Barcelona against Almeria, and that is Fermin Lopez. Fermin Lopez, 21-year-old Spaniard, kind of came from nowhere. He came from Linares Deportivo. I don't even know. I think it's the 3rd league in Spain. They signed him for a fairly small fee in the summer, and he's put in 40 games this season, 9 goals in his debut season for Barcelona. So he scored both goals in this game. And when Gavi went down, people were absolutely smashing the panic button because they didn't think they had another attacking mid here, as Pedri was also injured. But Fermin Lopez stepped up in a big way, and he has absolutely delivered. And Xavi just keeps trusting the youth, and he keeps paying out. I mean, he played Hector Fort, in 17-year-old left back, Paul Kubarsi, 17-year-old center back, Fermin Lopez, Pedri, and then Lamine Yamal, who's 16 years old. So 2 17, 1 16-year-old in the starting XI against Almeria, and they won pretty comfortably 2-0. That's fairly remarkable if you really think about it. So just wanted to highlight that, and Fermin Lopez especially.
Yeah, of course, La Liga has 2 games left, so there'll be the final week is the 25th, similar to Serie A. We'll have both of those leagues covered for you here on the full-time roundup as they get ready to wrap up. But Daniel, we want to touch on, as you mentioned it, the championship race. They are in the playoff. They will have their final set as Norwich beat Leeds in the first game. And the second game will be played today, which is Southampton versus West Bromwich. Both teams were 0-0 going into Albion, excuse me, going into their games. Yeah, giving me a hard time about pronunciation. Give me a break. And so both games were 0-0 going into it. Norwich, unfortunately, crashes out yesterday in the first of the two. Any thoughts here? I didn't get a chance to watch this one, candidly, and I probably won't be able to watch the other one today. But, of course, Leeds, Premier League side last year, and any expectations of the second games from today. And then, of course, the playoff final.
Yeah, well, I picked Leeds. I said Leeds. I want them to win. Unfortunately, it was tough.
You're welcome,
Johnny
Ewan.
That.
You're welcome, Ewan.
Thank you, Ewan. Sorry, John. But their attackers were in full force. They scored 2 goals in the 7th and the 20th minute. They kind of iced this game, and then kind of kept on heaping on the pain for Norwich. But Leeds look like the hot team here, and if they can win at home in a very comfortable way, I feel like they should use this game as a launching pad for the final. When it comes to Southampton West Brom, no idea what to expect. I mean, both of the games were 0-0. I think Southampton should win this game. I'm going to look at head-to-head here. Southampton has won the last 2, not including the first leg. So I think Southampton at home has the edge, and I would predict a Leeds Southampton final here, and I would say probably Leeds to win that game.
Would be a great story to see Southampton back in the Premier League. Of course, they were there under Ralph Hasenhüttl before he got fired, and they got relegated. So it will be interesting to see if that's the final. Both teams, very, very historic names in the Premier League, of course, and then they will go up against Leeds. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. I'm sure Ewan will be on pins and needles today, as well as in the final. We'll maybe try and get his thoughts if he's celebrating. If not, maybe we won't talk to him come the post final, but it will be interesting to just get his thoughts maybe going into that. And then, of course, we'll see if we can grab his reactions to the game afterwards. But Daniel, you mentioned, there's a lot going on. We have a lot of things coming up in the pipeline, a lot of changes coming to the show, but we will have you covered. Again, like I said, still one more round to go in Serie A, La Liga, and then, of course, a big summer of football that we'll get you ready for with European Championships and Coppa America. We'll have all the squads and teaser episodes and get you previewed for those tournaments in the coming months. Daniel will be in Germany, so maybe we'll get a live pitch side report from Daniel at some of the games.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. We'll see. But of course, keep an eye out for us on X, Full-Time Roundup. We are doing a little bit more collaborating with the Charlotte Soccer Show, so you may hear some more of their voices here from time to time, and vice versa, us on their show. But you can follow them at For the Crown Baby on X as well. But of course, if you listen to us, thank you to the listeners. If you can download, like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast, leave us a 5-star rating. Nothing is going to happen in the next couple of days. Just keep that in mind. We will keep everybody informed of what's going on. Just a few changes as we try and cover the entire globe of football with everything going on. And we love the game. We know that the listeners love the game as well. And so we do this for you guys. So hopefully some good changes in the future. But Daniel, always a pleasure to see you. I'm sure I will see you on Sunday for Championship Sunday somewhere in the Queen City. Hopefully, maybe I'll have a box of tissues for you for Jurgen to celebrate with you. But until the next time, we will see you in the next episode of the Full-Time Roundup.